the next topic, and I'll kind of start with my answer here because it was kind of what I was about to say. So the next topic that I wanted to bring up is, in thinking about our society today, are we headed to a dystopia type kind of future? And I know, Kirby, you wanted to go down, you didn't want to go down this path, but it was a question on here. So we had to do it. So I'll start off with my answer, I guess, because, it was kind of what I was about to say. And then after hearing everything that you guys have all said, I think it's a little bit of everything. So I think it is survival. I think it's environmental destruction. And I think it's tech. And the reason I say that is, obviously we have global warming. Like Arizona every summer is hotter than the last. There is proof that it exists. So it's like you have that. The survival thing, honestly, after this pandemic, I don't know how we would do, because toilet paper was like the first thing that sold out. And like we did not, as like a society, handle that well at all.
I'll wipe my own ass.
Yeah. So like if there was to be like a true like crazy disaster, like I don't know how we're gonna react to that if we can barely handle like a pandemic.
Yeah.
And then the tech thing, like I definitely see that in our future. I mean, they already just brought up the fact about doing the metaverse. Which is essentially what's that movie Ready Player One?
Yeah,
it's essentially that everyone's
that sounds great. Okay,
yeah, that is great. I'm all for that.
I'm just not trying to Terminator. I'm more for the Ready Player One, less of the Terminator.
I mean, I'm down to play some real life video games, which is what they're trying to do. But at the same time, you also I was about to say earlier, is you have all of these robots that are basically giving emotion and what Elon Musk's Neuralink, where he was like able to talk, like use a pig to communicate. I forgot what the whole thing was, but I know like they succeeded with it. And then you have like the robots that are working for the military, where they can just utilize them instead of using real people. So I honestly think that is a realistic thing in our future. Like it could happen. It just honestly at this point, it's a matter of which one of those things is going to happen. Because obviously you have global warming, you have the robot stuff. So yeah, that's kind of just my take on it. Hopefully it's not anytime soon, but
hopefully we're gone, right? Leave it to our kids like everybody else did.
Like everybody else did. Just get down the road a little bit.
Inherit the debt, man. Get out of my face.
The older we get, it's more of like, I get why you guys left this for us. We're gonna pass it on too.
We'll go with you, Kirby.
I think that it really feels that way. I don't know necessarily that we're running headfirst into like a dystopian future, but it definitely feels that way. Like especially over the past couple of years, like we've all been stuck at home. Like we're consuming like just endless amounts of media, and it's not all good. It's actually very little. It's good. We have like this news culture that rushes out stories that fits kind of whatever narrative is going on that week. And there's really no fact checking, and we just see doom and gloom in the forefront of our culture and our society. And we've been consuming that for the past 2 years because, media companies, that's what sells. That's what people click on. That's what people are interested in.
Got a new title for this podcast.
I know, really.
We think we're not gonna clickbait the shit out of this? You kidding me? That's the first thing we're doing.
Keep getting us heat. Keep giving us this heat. We're about to be rich.
Thumbnail's about to be lit.
Yep. So unfortunately for us, that's what we're seeing. Like, especially when we're home all the time. I have a little fortunately, and Pat, you might be able to kind of get behind this, but have a little bit of a different perspective on things, because fortunately for me, with my day job, I still get out every day. I'm face to face with the public. I'm working in accounts. I'm talking to people, and I see, a lot of the good that's still around, the communities that are still together, and, the love that people have for each other, and what, how people are helping each other out. Like the other day in a store, I saw, a guy that couldn't pay for his groceries, and the lady behind him paid for it. So I don't think that, we're really rushing towards that societal dystopia. We're not as divided as we're meant to think we are. I just believe that we've seen, a very loud minority on both sides of the spectrum, like the societal spectrum. It's not really representative of where our society is. But I could see it going that way.
And before you continue, I kind of agree with that too, and it's kind of like, I didn't want to sound so dark and gloomy with my take on it, but like the media has such a pull on that now, and it's like you only see one thing, so it's like I do see it in some aspects, but then it could also be very exaggerated as well. So I really appreciate your take there.
I mean, I feel like a lot of what we consume, especially as far as like news media is concerned, is so sensationalized because as you know, mentioned in when I was talking about Fahrenheit 451, like the human attention span is so short. So you have to have something that is in their face to get their attention, to get their views, to get the money. And that's what it boils down to. And they're just going for money, but we're I think at the first time in our society are seeing like the effect of just mass consumption of controlled news sources. And it's really taken a toll on people. But when you get out and you see people talk to them face to face, not on the internet, because the internet's a fucking awful place. Like you realize you realize that people aren't these absolute fucking assholes. And a lot of people, they're very kind to each other. So at least that's what I see on a daily basis. So I feel like we could be going in that direction. We're seeing a lot of like government programs that are coming in that are like mandates that are coming down that are really limiting what people would see as their freedoms, and you could kind of interpret that as heading towards a governmental control dystopia. But I don't really think we're there yet, and I don't think we're moving there as quickly as some people think we would be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in fact, I just want to put this out there that I think you are what your environment is, right? So that should be like said very loud and clear. Yeah. That if you are around people that are assholes, you'll probably be an asshole, and all you'll see is assholes, right? If you're around good people, all you'll probably see is good people, and everybody around you will seem good. So it's kind of one of those things right now where, kind of hitting on what Kirby was saying, is that we're getting fed the information in the same circles that we know. Yep. So if we're hanging around these circles, all they're feeding us is information from the circles, which completely tips our scales from one side to the other, and it makes us very black and white instead of all this beautiful gray in between. So yeah, man, that was really it was a really thought out answer, and I appreciate you guys sharing that. That was nice.
Yeah, well, there's a term for that. It's called an echo chamber, and that's I mean, I don't watch news. Like I research things that I'm interested in and things that I think are important, but never take somebody's opinion for fact. Like always do your own research.
For sure.
And like, I'll kind of run into my answer because I'm in a similar kind of box as Kirby on that segment. Overarchingly, in terms of the question itself, I'm going to say no. And I think a lot of it is the optimist in me. But I would say two major reasons. The first being kind of similar to what I was saying in the last question is that I do think a lot of things are inherently cyclical. Like they do run in that same circle where you're going to come through these times where, you bring society to this stress point, to this brink point where like you see that we kind of feel this way, but eventually that does kind of fall onto its head and we can kind of readjust and find its way back. And a lot of the reason that we do feel that way, I think, goes into that second point and kind of what Kirby was talking about, about kind of our day jobs being a little bit more in stores and in the field and kind of in these seeing like other people's interactions, is that you see these micro interactions between people that kind of keep the faith in their own way. And that, to Gums's point about being a product of your environment, is like these people around you that you can kind of interact with in like these smaller matters really do affect the bigger picture more than I think most people understand. And in that, like, there's only so much that we can give power to, like these larger platforms that can kind of push us toward this theoretical dystopia without these micro interactions really affecting the bigger way that we think about ourselves and about what we value. So I do think that that's kind of a way for us to kind of look at it. It's like we're always going to get pushed to that breaking point, but at some point, like our environment, our interactions with each other, and the way that we kind of do truly feel at our core is really what's going to help us kind of keep the wheel turning. And it's like the bad part of the wheel is always going to be there. It's never going to not exist. And we're always going to go through that point. It's like, how do you go and make sure the wheel keeps turning? And I think that's got to be more of kind of the focus. instead of stopping the wheel in a spot where we end in this dystopia.
For sure. And okay, so for my answer, I think we are headed towards a dystopia. So maybe I'm a little bit adverse compared to others. I'm not giving you a timeline of like when we'll get there. Yeah. I'm just saying like, hey, our direction is going to point us, and maybe that's kind of just, it's inevitable almost, because I think that if it's at the very minimum, we'll agree it'll be environmental dystopia when we have 10 billion people or 10 trillion people on this planet, and we just can't actually afford to feed them. We can't afford to clothe them. Like eventually that's just going to crack under the pressure of multiplication. Like we can't actually hold that. And then something will cleanse. We'll have a war, or we'll have some type of genocide, or we'll have like whether that be like by the environment, like a volcano erupts. Yep. Like I think it'll balance in that type of way. In fact, I think it's always happened that way, where like the more we break out like this, something will cleanse us, because it's like inevitable. I also think right now, like we're really seeing like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor. Because I consider myself middle class, but holy shit, is it hard to be part of the middle class? Yeah. Like, it's just like, fuck, like I make too much to get like, to get a discount, so to speak, right? I won't just call it like straight government aid, but like to get like a discount, right? When I have a child, I'm going to have to pay like $400 a week if I want to keep that child in daycare so that we can work. Or I can sit at home and lose even more money, but I don't not make, I'm not making not enough to where I can get some help for that. And then it's like taxes. And then it's like all this other shit that just compiles on what's called the middle class. And it really is like there really is no distinction anymore in between. And why I think that's a dystopia is because you kind of see those movies where I truly believe that if you can imagine it, you can create it. That's kind of where almost everything's happened. That's why when we read books from the 80s and TVs and stuff from the 80s, and they talk about lightsabers or laser guns or whatever, we imagine that shit, and now we've created it. So I think that we see these movies where you see like this giant gap between the wealth and the poor, and then just the friction that it creates. I think we definitely will have that sooner than later, because there's just going to be so many more poor than there are going to be rich when you've got men like that have a few $1 billion in their pocket, right? So it's kind of like you can't spend all that money. What do you do with it? And then I don't even want to get into the politics behind of it's their money and keep it, because it's like, yeah, it's their money, keep it. But I just want to say, like, there are dystopians. I feel a dystopian future for us that's kind of inevitable. And then you do talk about technology and say, holy shit, like I'm one that doesn't fear it. I already know we're being watched. I already know we're being monitored. I already know all this. I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because what am I going to do to stop it? Right. Sure. Now, even if I got everybody to fucking rise up and say, hey, they're monitoring us, so the fuck what? They still got security cameras out there. They still got this. They still got that. Like, as long as they're not actively using this recorded camera to spy on me and then use that in something to capture me, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Now, if they use that and say, okay, Mark Gums, we turned on your camera without you, and we seen what you were doing in your room, man, and now we're going to take you to jail, that I have a problem with. Yep. But just like anything, that shouldn't be plausible and used in court, right? So as long as that type of stuff's not happening, like I could give a shit if my phone's making recommendations for me, because sometimes I wanted that fucking dog carrier that has the Minnesota Timberwolves on it. You know what I mean? So like I just don't. It's like, hey, there's pyramids under the ocean, and I go, so the fuck what? What are you going to do about it? And they just go, but there's pyramids under the ocean. I'm like, I don't. So what? What are you going to do about it? And it's kind of the same thing. And so I'm just and so I think we're headed towards a dystopian future. I don't know when we'll get there, but one of these things will probably hit. We just hope it's not fucking Terminators and all this weird shit, but probably will be gone before Wall-E and everything else happens to us. So.
Yeah, not in our lifetime.
That's the 1984 concept where it's like you did something in your room and the camera picked it up while you didn't know it was happening. Next thing you know, you're in jail. Kind of thing. Now that crosses the line. You can't use that's not admissible in court, so to speak, even if they caught me doing it. So
I wanted to bring up one last thing here, kind of just hearing what you guys said, and then we'll go on to another topic here. But I've always been like an optimist, and I see that people are inherently good. And kind of like the point that Kirby and Pat said, being out in public, they see it more than say me, working from home. And watching like the news and Sports Center and only seeing one thing. And like a good example of that's been spread around is like the other day there was a hostage situation in a synagogue where they held a bunch of Jewish people hostage, and they didn't even call them Jewish people. Like the media made it what people like, they made it basically they gave people a different view of what that media wanted that view to be. So it's like you only get one side of things.
Yep.
And it just chooses what people like to see. So what I'm trying to get to is like when I was in Hawaii, when I was working from home, the first day I was there, I went to this like poke place, and this person noticed I was a tourist. The media, said that Hawaii, like the locals don't want people coming in, like they're angry. So I go to this poke restaurant. The first thing I'm like, they're asked, are you from here? I said, no, I'm visiting. The person behind me bought me my lunch, and he said, welcome to Hawaii. Like, we love to have you here. Just, make sure you're just respectful. That's all we care about. And welcome to the island. Have fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like, there's things like that. So I don't know. It is scary to see that there is a, dystopian future, or it could be a possibility in the future. But I think it's more of like a global warming kind of thing versus like, I feel like the media's pushed it, so far one way where it's like I said, people are inherently good. I think the people would, revolt first before we got to that stage,